Friends, colleagues, today we will host a discussion on cybersports, and we decided to call this session Cyber Classes from School to University. I'd like to introduce my colleagues. Alexander Gorbachenko, head of the Standing Committee for Esports of the International Association for the Protection of the Rights of Athletes. Maxim, Fleur, president of the Moscow Esports Federation. Pavel, Golubev, head of the Association for the Development of Esports of Russia. And Faik, Shorty, Alieva, who's a coach of the German team in Wild Drift and a co-founder of esports organization called Future Perfect. 2021 was the year of esports. We met several times. We discussed all the pressing issues that the industry is facing in different platforms. But today we want to do this debate as a class, as a free-for-all. Let our fantasy run away, but I hope that our fantasy will help us to address the issues that esports are facing and how both parents and children can find points of convergence in esports. Can they find some space for growth? Both of them. What are the barriers? What is good for us? We'll look at some research and surveys, we'll look at the trends, both here in Russia and abroad. But first, I'd like to start with you, Mr. Gorbachenko. What should schools, colleges and universities do to make sure that gaming becomes part and parcel of the curriculum, and that would also drive higher academic performance? Thank you so much, Ms. Alieva. Thank you for the invitation, first of all. I'm so delighted to be here today, and it's a privilege to be able to share my opinion at this platform. One of the key ideas that I've raised for a long time is that esports is a tool to develop people cognitive abilities. Back to your question, definitely, we need to make sure that there is continuity. E-games turning to esports, and we need to be able to chart that trajectory of an e-athlete from school to elite sports through colleges, vocational, educational facilities. We need to be able to chart that trajectory, that path. And we need to harness the expertise that our specialists have, but we also need to have science and research behind it, and I very much hope that the government will become the contractor for that research. And again, the government could be represented by higher education and by school education. So going back to my idea, as I said, there are hundreds of tools to improve cognitive abilities. Take Go. That's a game that's been there for 5,000 years old. Chess, checkers, and I think children are now born with the innate ability to play checkers. Yes, the digital natives, right. So at this stage of our evolution, with the technology that's available, we've now come up with computer games. And not all of them, but most of them could be used as a tool to get meta skills, particularly in school. And we can also drive interest towards education. And some games have been used in education, for example, Minecraft. And adults use Minecraft. We had examples when they held sessions in Minecraft, and we used some of the games so that to teach children to do budgeting. And some children said, "Oh, that's how much you spend on us." So they were amazed. Yes. And we also use the product as specialists. We want to drive some performance, and we use the products that the industry gives us, development products. And these must be commercially viable products, commercially successful projects. And we need to have some synergy between science and someone who has the demand for it. The customer. Currently, we can come up with a product of any level. It's difficult to produce 3A products, but if you have the right funding, I'm sure that Russian software firms will be able to come up with any quality. Okay, when we talk about parents and teachers, we need to dispel some of the myths. We need to incentivize them. Now, to put it mildly, the parents and teachers believe it's wrong. Computer games are wrong for the children. We need to change that mentality. What do we need to do? What does e-games do? Big data, research. Could you talk a little bit more about it? Yes, any game, if you take the most popular ones, mobile games like League of Legends, Dota 2, they drive your cognitive abilities. Now, if you play those games, in each of those games there are hundreds of characters, and with every patch it's updated, and every person has to digest it and again update it to get the right characters for a specific stretch, for a specific round. You need to align your character with the characters of the teammates. So you have those processes going on in your brains. It's like big data crunching. You foresee the outcomes. You look at the strategy, your own strategy and the strategy of your teammates. That's what's happening in those mobile games that I mentioned. Take shooters, Counter-Strike, for example. That's the top level of concentration. Communication, yes, reaction, top-notch skills in this area. And the person needs to train herself or himself to bring yourself to the top, to exert yourself to the utmost extent, to show the best performance. It's not just about 4 buttons and a mouse. No, there are some serious analytical processing going on, self-preparation to get to the pedestal. There are millions of people who play those games. There's such fierce competition. In order to be able to differentiate yourself, to stand out, you need to be really serious about what you do. Now, if you go back to esports, the trajectory that you can select as an athlete, e-athlete, again, your gaming performance can help you stand out, to promote yourself, and scouts could then find you and help you grow. So computer games, it's like a great tool to improve your brain and help you train to move on from the virtual world to the real world. Managerial skills, picking up new skills, new technology, and computer games are really great in this. Absolutely. And going back to parents, what's important for us? is to make sure that parents are aware of this, awareness raising, and that's my dream. We need to make them gaming literate. Many parents not aware of what's happening in those games, of what we are talking about, so we need to give them the lowdown. They need to know the language their children talk to them. There is leisure, gaming, and preparation for esports. The industry is very young, and my colleagues will talk about it. There are not that many specialists in it. There's a deficit in methodology, and there are subjective and objective reasons. But that's where we are, but I hope we'll sort it out. Thank you. Maxim, Fleur, President of Moscow Esports Federation, over to you. Well, unlike many of my peers, I know a lot about esports. I'm not the top-notch expert, but I can safely say that I'm more versed in this area. Since 2016, I've been working on it very actively. But we started playing computer games a long time ago. They were the first strategic games, at least what I loved. This was the different shooters and strategic games, like the Epoch of Empires. And I'd like you, as President of Moscow Sports Federation, share your views on what's the role of the big business. Are there any sponsorship contracts? Is there any synergy between federations, regional federations? What's your perspective on what's happening? Whenever there are some competitions in the US and Asia, you have telecom companies who are sponsors, Mercedes, other top car makers, and you have great viewership figures. I've been following this because that's why I do have those data. What about Russia? What are the barriers, and what can be proud of? Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for an invitation. It's a wonderful forum. And there are two questions. I'll start with the second one. I think it's a more kind of a positive one. And I guess there are a lot of things we can share and be proud of, and to speculate on how it could grow further. Federations, both regional and the nationwide, have been working together very closely. There's been a series of events held together. Since we are in a cyber class today, we talk about student esports and school esports. I'll start with student esports. Moscow Federation hosts the Cyber League games. It's the 12th edition of those games, and for a second year running, they are considered to be a regional stage in the Russian nationwide competition run by the Russian Federation. So it's a great chance for us to work with our peers from the National Federation, and I'd like to say hi to them because we've been working together for the second year running, and as I said, we've been very successful. We were very optimistic going forward. And again, you have schools, right? You work with schools, but there are other great examples. Earlier this year, there's going to be a huge tournament in Dota. We'll do it together with the Science Consortium, and the federation from Tomsk is has been helping us. It's another major project. Is it like Battle for Science? No. There was another event last year. Could you talk a little bit more about it? That was an amazing example. It was a gala final, a 2-week tournament available to every student from Russia and abroad. It was attended by multiple teams. We had 2 disciplines, League of Legends and Dota. Excellent support from the developers. And just like to echo what Alexander said, we need to have support from the federal authorities, the municipal authorities, and also from the developer itself, because sometimes the developer is a bigger federation than all those federal and regional associations and organizations. So there's a positive charge in this. It's a great signal, and such collaboration is there. You always want to have more. I don't want to sound too positive. Now, we also need to find some mismatches, some gaps. But it's a growing industry, a growing sports, not just in Russia, but around the world. So, again, it's a long way. There's a long way to go, but I'm quite optimistic, and would like to use this occasion to call on students and universities to take part in a regional competition, so that they could move on to nationwide competitions. And there's going to be an exciting event. It's going to be live, or it's going to be offline, not just online. It's a classic example of student esports, and it's going to be unveiled by this big tournament that will celebrate the Day of Science here in Russia, and we'll host it together with the consortium. Will it be an annual event? Well, it's hard to say. You'd love to have it, yes? Definitely you'd want to have these events more often. And during the awards ceremony, we had Mr. Falkov, the Minister of Higher Education and Science. Yes, we had a lot of guests. There was so much interest. And there was an intellectual component. And we even have a commentator who worked at that tournament. Yes, you talked about the guests. Yes. But again, I've been too positive, I guess. I'll move on to the first part of your question. Let's talk about big business support. Definitely, major corporates, both domestic and international, are interested in projects where they can get huge coverage or to position their brand in a very clear and straightforward way to a specific audience. And esports has a clear segment. It's young people, mostly. They are active FMCG consumers, and they will shape the backbone of consumption and going forward, like big cars, as you said. Some will even go as far as luxury segment. So you just need to have a clear idea where we are, what segment we're looking at. School level esports is not developing that actively. It's not that public, and does not provide such a huge coverage. But for us as a sports organization, that's our foundation. We need to be able to capture and discern the talents at that level, and then help them grow at the student level, and then they could end up in professional teams. We can help them get promoted there.
опять же, скажу банальную вещь. Студенческий спорт
Student esports is
активно просматривается только в одном регионе.
popular in one region.
Северная Америка.
That's North America.
Не уверен, что модели
I'm not sure that
сегмента, да, спортивного.
those esports models could be easily applied in other regions, but there are many
Использовать такие же
countries who would like to copy-paste those models and to develop this industry. So could we really take something from those
точно уверен.
geographies? Absolutely, we indeed can
Оставаться в локальном
apply a lot, but we still need to adapt it to the local realities. It needs to be adapted domestically to our athletes, to our parents, to our fans. So we need to readjust it a little bit.
просматривается лучше.
So we know more about student esports,
На примере собственных соревнований.
and we run those open competitions, MSKL, MSKL Plus, and the Battle for Science tournaments motivate people even more when the Ministry of Higher Education and Science is engaged. Then you have quite a different level of spotlight, and I hope that you will be able to endorse what I said. So it's great to have high viewership, and it's much easier to well sponsors. But again, the backbone of sponsors is usually at the big events where you have a high level of viewership, where you might have bookmakers, and there will be other stories, and you might have better, more interesting collaboration.
Всем хочется смотреть.
Well, it's clear. Everyone wants to watch Premier League games. If you talk football, maybe only in UK they would watch games of the fifth division. Well, we still have time left. Thank you, Maxim. I need to add one thing. At a certain point of time, we will pass through the threshold where we will only have people in the world who could play computer games when they were little kids. We are arriving at that point. Well, I would not be surprised. The development is so quick. When I started to talk about 2016, it wasn't for nothing. It happened so that my younger kid decided to become a cyber athlete. And for us it was a blow. It came out of the blue, but banning is not a good tactics, and we decided to go deep into the process to understand and accept it, and it happened so, and it made us happy. And professionally, I decided that we need to study it as a phenomenon, because you need to understand what children do and how we can help them, as always. And it's very good that thanks to you, dear colleagues, Maxim, Alexander, Pavel, Faik, we could do this research. Maybe we couldn't collect too many data, but we will not stop on that. But the Department of Cybersports, Yelena Skarzynska, all colleagues who helped us showed that there is a lot of positive in what positive young people get from computer games, not necessarily being cyber athletes. This infrastructure requires a big number of professionals. And now a question to you, Pavel, as a head of Association for Cybersports Development. What are the main shortages you experience for your community for developing our cyber sports as an area, gaming as well? Gaming as the foundation block. It all begins with affection for game, but some people find it as the main course in their line. What latest developments, what can you expect from the scientific communities, from regional associations and non-government organizations? What do you lack? Well, with the higher question mark. Well, I'm not a big achiever. Thanks for the invitation. I thought that Maxim will hand it over to me when he said we shouldn't be too positive. I normally don't sound as somebody positive. So let's try to go down a number of statements I hope that would allow a common listener to understand me. You need to understand that Cybersports is a marketing tool of the property owner, games developers or publishers, like with a wealth company in case of Dota 2. And the rights owner is actually the king and god in the market. So if the right owner says, I don't want any contest, and wealth companies cancelled the most serious contests of the game, and teams were preparing for them, assembling their teams, and now they don't know what to do in the next few months, how they report to what to do with players, what to report to associations, but nobody can prevent it. Some call for boycotts, but it can be seen as bite in the hand, feeding you, and wealth as a company can drive such people out of the contest. So, and cybersports is business, first of all. It's where you make money. And of course, more of them look at commercially attractive projects in the first turn. And uniting the 2 points, we get the third point. In cybersports, you don't have any social order, because the right owner is happy with having a couple dozens of organizations for the world just to do the attractive environment and attract cyber players. And for business, it's not interesting to have contests for amateurs or newbies, because, they don't make money on that. Business is not interested in developing science. They are not interested to educate parents. Well, you mentioned educating parents, but it doesn't bring you any money. So you have a nice picture of commercial cybersports where our guys are very decent at the world level with the help of investors, sponsors, partners, and those who are insiders know the very pale mass-scale cybersports for newbies, for amateurs, non-professionals, like third or fourth divisions. They are based on enthusiasm and commitment of some people, but it is needed to supply human resources to commercial cybersports, sports of high achievements. We could probably change the situation using our community with activists, business people, scientists, and right owners, if they would try to listen to each other and gather at a table for negotiations as often as possible, but I don't believe it's probable currently, because most players focus on tactics and local possibilities to use themselves and make money. And you are not thinking about strategic development of the industry. However, I want to say, however, there is one but, right? I will add this but after a couple of sentences. Yeah. And as I said, you can do something with it, but in current situation, people try to bite something from that pie for themselves instead of making a bigger pie. And going back to your question, what could we do here at this stage? What can we change currently? We need like a center of force or a single force that would be supported by resources. And I don't only mean funds, also authority, power. Well, let's call it a resource. And they should not be biased. They shouldn't cater for the interests of just one person. And they need a horizon of planning for maybe 3 or 4 years at least to understand that we are on the track and no one will touch us, no one will ask from us money back. And only in this case it would be possible to gather everyone who would not like to be united in the Association of Cybersports and in Long Game Rule project, where we try to unite heads of the clubs just to have a foundation for developing the cybersports. People just don't understand it. And what about the consortium of higher education schools? Well, maybe they could attract players just to move forward. Well, I can't tell you if it's possible. It's 50-50. The chance is 50-50. Either yes or no. We can try it. We can focus on how such a side would be independent. I know that there is a Coliseum company and guys plan to build a center for cybersports. Yes, and we, if you remember the Creative Week, we were together with them. Yes, and once again, if there are computer clubs that could be regulated, clubs that would change in terms of maintenance, new equipment, why should you have more computer clubs? So here, you need to look at interests of people who organize it. Well, it's not an excellent, but it's good mark plus. It's better than having an excellent mark with minus. Despite all problems we have young people, and last year Nico Star and Vlad Dvoretsky attended the last Guided Forum. And now I would like to hand it over to Faik to tell us whether cybersports is promising, if it should be further developed. Okay, thanks for inviting. It's an exciting question. It's really interesting. It's like a black and white question. You either say yes or no. If you say yes, everyone will go for that. If you say no, everyone would ignore. Well, it's not a black and white situation. You have a lot of great points. If you discuss cybersports in CIS in Russia, as my colleague said, it's a little bit more developed in other regions like South Korea and North America, and you have more interests, and there is an alliance of all stakeholders, the right owners, the state, the players. There is an infrastructure already built. But if we would talk on how it can be, when we talk about those regions, so maybe you can add optimism and ask ourselves why cannot we build it. If we would talk about our experience, and well, it would be correct, and this is what I'm sure about, the cybersports is worth it. And I would like to draw a parallel with regular traditional sport. Why could it be so, and why you should do it? I was to South Korea, and I saw the way it is organized, and it's a long-lasting story from school, elementary school, when you have like a hobby club. You can play different computer games, different disciplines, then university, and then out of them only few people make further progress and enter professional organizations and become professionals, like in regular sports. Well, a kid would go to a school football club at 5 years, and not all of them would become professional footballers. But there is an idea that it's helpful and that you will get more connections. A human being is social. We want to have relations with close-minded people with the same mentality. For me, I managed to find people interested in the same things like me, and I managed to establish a circle of friends. I found friends, and I could develop. You cannot judge whether I managed to, but this is what I think. Cybersports has many facets, and there were a lot of research on whether games can be helpful for developing cognitive functions of a human. In professional cybersports or related things, when we talk about students' championships, well, we're not saying all students can win the global tournaments, but it's helpful. It's a soft skill on working with other people. You have different disciplines, you have solo disciplines where you are not accountable before anyone, but there are people interested in team games in cybersports, and that I'm a person like that myself on White Drift. I'm a coach of team. Yeah, that's the next level, but I'm sure that future lies there. But soft skills on how you work with a team, the skill to make decisions, to be responsible, to follow decisions taken by others, teamwork. This is what you can derive from cybersports. If you are intellectual, if you use your brain, and no illusions should be. So it's not like you make your kid play computer game and he becomes a genius. Well, a joke, sorry. Well, if he's a genius, maybe he invents a new game. Well, you know, you have geniuses that come to play games and open new horizons, but that's rather an exception. Computer games and cybersports should be seen as a tool, and then all the stakeholders influence on the process and how efficient the tool is. If you well, you can use a bar for powerlifting, but you can kill a person with it. You can look at how the tool is used, and you need to proactively involve educational programs here. Of course, there is commercial interest in businesses and in publishers, in developers. If we would talk about the cybersports in its current iteration, it was the way to distribute your game. Well, the League of Legends Cybersports Championship 10 years ago, it was in the basis, and it was organized by the publishers. It was not like cybersports of 1990s, where amateurs would gather together. No, for 12 years, the developer organizes the tournaments for everyone to understand how popular the game is. Of course, there are commercial interests, but also non-commercial. It can help people. It can help kids to develop personally and find people they would like to socialize with and communicate to. Back at school, I believe that labor lessons and PT were the main disciplines, but actually in school they teach you to learn to use that skill of getting new material and use it in the future. And the skill for socializing, the rest of it doesn't really matter. History or literature, so computer, sports, cybersports can be also used here. Well, you can use computer technologies to learn more about history, geography, just to have a look at the into the Pacific, Mariana Depression. The epoch was something that made me concentrate on history, like Jeanne d'Arc's campaign. You need to set France free from the English, drive the English out. And then I started to read books about Jeanne d'Arc, and that the war lasted for 100 years. But it all started with a computer game campaign. If I would have such games in my childhood, I would focus more on physics, mathematics, precise sciences that can be taught. Well, I have a degree in maths, and as part of my analytical job and job of the coach, I used the theory of games a lot and methods for optimizing. And well, it's you can explain a simple derivative with the skills of a character. Well done, excellent with plus. Well, sadly, our cyber lesson is about to be over. It was a huge pleasure for me. We had forums for 3 days, and 3 days were not enough to discuss everything, to make conclusions, to share with others, because problems were really relevant. And I would like to share my ideas, my emotions from forums we had last year. And there were 10 of them, forums, events, conferences. I saw people with eyes burning, young guys, and their energy was contagious. And I believe that with people who are there, the forums, you can achieve a lot. Raise mountains down. When you have an army, they are all willing. They want to promote it, develop it. And when my younger kid was on Team Jazz team, and they had Danish international players who came from Copenhagen and play with them. And that's also about removing language barrier, where our guys learn to talk English, to communicate with their teammates. And I asked the Danish kids, where you learned it? We learned it at school. What school? We have a cyber school. What do you mean? A school where we implement the main curriculum, and there is a discipline, either strategy, shooter, or whatever. And I thought, well, how great it is. And last year we opened here in Moscow in a Russian cyber school. So to summarize, maybe it is a first sparrow. We don't have Elena Skarzinska here, but maybe all of us were involved in establishing that school in Moscow. If we have a network of cyber colleges, not just in 2 universities, but we spread it for bachelor and master problems in higher education, I think we will no longer have any shortages. Thanks, everyone.